Hey guys, Doc here. So, last week my friends and I participated in the second ever t-shirt jam hosted by Team Nom Nom. The theme of the jam was Start a Cult. Unfortunately, there were only 5 submissions, but they're all pretty good. You should check them out. But today I'm going to be talking about our submission, Cult Classic. So, the first thing we did was jump into a Discord call in order to discuss ideas. We had a lot of great ideas. However, the one that we kept coming back to was this idea of a comedy stealth game where you're a celebrity trapped in a mall and you must escape the mall without confronting any of your fans. This idea was great because it had a large possibility space for gameplay and we just couldn't stop coming up with ideas. So we all voted and rolled with it. After that, we just made a task list and started going at it. Working with a team of 4 can be a little bit tricky, so we made sure to separate the tasks so we wouldn't interfere with one another. My first task was to get the player controller and player object working. We ended up going with a first-person controller, as we felt this would be the best perspective for our game. I made a player movement script in order to control the player's movements, and I made a player look script so that the player could look left, right, up, and down with the mouse. After this was done, I also put together a player jump script. This allowed the player to jump whenever you press the spacebar, but I also needed to increase gravity, as the default values feel very floaty. One idea that we had for the game was for the player to be able to go inside of stores and get items, which would help the player avoid enemies. In order to do this though, we needed to have an inventory system, so that's what I worked on next. The first item that we decided to implement was the plunger. We decided that the plungers would be used to throw at enemies in order to escape them while they were chasing you. So our artist, Fecomancer, worked on the plunger model, while I worked on getting the objects set up to be added to your inventory. At this point in the game, you could pick up the plungers, and you could drop them. Nothing too special, but it's a start. However, that was not the only model that Fecomancer had finished at this point. He was able to put together some floor and wall textures, and had even finished an escalator and a skylight. My other partners, Pursoon and TF Boolean, had also been making progress. They put together a simple AI state machine where the agents would patrol to a node, wait for a little while, and then patrol to another node. The next thing I did was throw together a graphical user interface for the player's inventory. To do this, I made a player GUI manager script, and since the player inventory was a scriptable object, all I needed to do was plug it in. To make the plunger icon, I simply took a snapshot of the plunger and erased the background of the image. At this point, all the basic systems were set up, so I just started going ham and programming different items into the game. First, I finished programming in the plunger object, which was easy because all the player has to do is throw it. The second item we decided to do was a fern in a bottle. Once thrown on the ground, a giant plant will sprout from where the bottle hit. While this plant provides the player with vision coverage, it also makes the player move very slow. Again, Fecomancer outdid himself with the models. The next 2 objects had to be done a little bit differently, as instead of throwing them out into the world, the player would actually use them and gain a buff. The first buff was a disguise, which would be used to make the player invisible to the fans. There's not much visually to show here, but we were able to get it working. The other buff item that we made were spring shoes. This would allow the player to jump really high and reach the second story. At this point, Pursoon had finished laying out the first section of the mall. It was really exciting getting to see the first pass of the play environment. While Pursoon was working on that, Fecomancer had finished working on the fan model, which was the scary mannequin thing. TF Boolean had been working on the AI, and I had finished working on a game state manager, which had a lose condition if the player gets touched by a fan. At this point, it felt like it was time to start working on some music and sound effects. The first thing that I felt we needed was some shopping music. After getting some inspiration from YouTube, I opened up Reaper, and this is what I came up with. We also needed some sneaking music and some chasing music. Here's the sneaking music. and the chase music is just the sneaking music, but sped up. And finally, for the sound effects, I got a couple of sounds from freesound.org, and used Reaper to put an equalizer over them and edit their pitch. After Fecalmancer had finished working on a disguise model, I had integrated it into the game, and I had made a first pass at making a shop prefab. Shortly after that, I'd finished working on the lose game animation. And Fecalmancer had finished working on the spring shoe power-up model, which I then integrated. All that was left was to finish up the shop prefabs and to lay out the rest of the level. This task easily took us the longest to do. We had to stay up the entire night before the day of the submission. And while the level wasn't designed perfectly, it worked well enough. Also, the blue nodes that you see right now, those are the nodes that the NPCs patrol to. But that's pretty much it. I feel like the game was a little bit overly ambitious, and I wish we had a little bit more time to add some polish. However, I'm very happy with the results. Anyway, our game and the rest of the games that were submitted during this jam will be in the link in the description. Thank you all for watching. Take it easy.